Today's episode, we have Charles Mardon. He has a wealth management fund with over £3 billion worth of assets under management. He's also the founder and owner of UltraFlex gyms. In today's episode, we're going to go through his backstory, how he got into the position he is in now with the businesses he has, and also a deep dive in terms of UltraFlex gyms, and also the habits and disciplines that made him the person he is in terms of how he scaled his businesses whilst competing at high level of bodybuilding and managing all of these plates at the exact same time. Now let's get into the episode. So Charles, you are hugely successful. You have a wealth management firm with over £3 billion in assets. You own UltraFlex gyms. You've got loads of other companies. Sitting here now in Dubai, did you think you'd be in this position when you were younger?
Not at all. No, far from it. I suppose if you'd have told me that I'd have a quarter of kind of the things going on that I did, I would have thought you were mad and so on and so forth. But I'm really glad that has happened. But I think it was always a case of just starting off with one or two things. How can I progress in that? How can I improve that? How can I do a little bit better? And then you almost break your own glass ceilings a little bit and give yourself permission. Or well, actually, maybe there is a bit more. I can do a little bit more. And then sometimes you meet people who are really successful, and I suppose not in an unpleasant way, but you're not always actually blown away by how suddenly super intelligent or talented they were, and you suddenly realize, well, if they could do it, maybe I could have a crack at this, and so on. And they just push on and go a little bit further.
What you said there is really interesting in a couple of different ways. The fact that, because I've had this multiple times, and I think for me, I'm a big believer in the law of exposure. If you're exposed to successful people and you see they're a human being, and maybe they're slightly retarded at certain things, yet they're super successful, you're like, well, if he can do it, then I can definitely do it. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think Dubai is great, because it's so easy to kind of get around those people. From where you are from, like Northern England, the UK, did you find the environment there maybe a bit more challenging to try and find that success around you and kind of be exposed to that?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll come back to that in a different way. I mean, one of the things that I think you look around for is, who's the person I want to be in 10 or 20 years? What are they doing now? And also, can I beg, borrow, or buy a little bit of their time in order to understand how they got there, what they did, what mistakes they made? Yeah, that sort of thing. And so, I end up actually going to London once a quarter, and I would go meet with a chap who founded a FTSE 100 company. He very kindly agreed to give me an hour of his time. A lot of the value of that was really in the preparation, putting together all the information that I knew he would ask me for that meeting, and wanting to show that I really valued his time. Actually, some of those hours were great because it made me stop and think, well, what am I doing and how is this working, and what do the figures look like, and so on and so forth. But also, he was just, he'd been through all this, and I would tell him what I was doing, and he would give me this sort of wry smile. And you could see he was thinking, he would say, well, actually, I did this. And he was very open. He would tell me about some of the massive mistakes he made, or some of the personal issues that he'd had, or things that he would have done differently. But it was great to have that benefit. I mean, it's a bit like having a live biography, but where you can ask questions, because you can skip so many problems, or at least if you're going to make them, know quite well what the risks are going into it as well. So that was really helpful. And then as I started businesses and got kind of more established in Leeds, then you start to meet people naturally who have had businesses and so on. But that was always a little bit of concern, is where is the future of me, and if they're not here, where have they gone, and how can I access them as well. How
old were you when you found this chap who was kind of mentoring you?
About 30. I was too nervous actually to approach him at the time, because I just thought, like, this guy's off on a pedestal. And there's actually a guy, I'd bought his business, and we went to a business conference, and I was looking for him so we could have breakfast together. And he'd gone and plonked himself down on this table with this guy who was a sir, and this other chap who, and he was kind of mortified at the time of what on earth is he doing sat there. But he then called me over, and we sat and we had breakfast together. And look, it was a great, he was a more experienced business guy, but he was also just very outgoing. And it was through that conversation he said, well, actually, look, Charles, if you'd be interested, I'd be happy to share some of my time. And then we hit it off and went from there.
How much older was he if you were 30?
Oh, he was in his 60s at the time. Okay. So it was great. And it's almost, in terms of a business sense, it was almost like a grandparent in business, in that grandparents get to do all the fun stuff, and they can also just sort of say, well, look, don't do this, and so on and so forth. But he also encouraged me to take more time out of work and actually travel to Spain, or go and do some things that I wouldn't have necessarily done otherwise, because you're saying, well, look, otherwise what's the point if you're not enjoying life as you go, and if you're not doing a few fun things, then you're missing out on the pleasure of the journey.
Was there one specific piece of advice from him you remember the most or had the biggest impact?
Yeah, I think he sadly, he had the breakdown of his first marriage, and because he was a workaholic, he used to work all hours, and eventually, you know, that kind of fell apart. And it was really understanding that, you know, you have to have balance in your life, because you can be super successful in one area, but if you neglect the other areas, that can have an issue. Commonly with business owners that I meet, often it's their health, actually. They tend to be very, very successful in business, and they're really overweight, and their health is appalling. And what derails them in business is actually that they get have some sort of health issue. So, you know, it's healthy, wealthy, and wise, I guess, is the way to describe it. But having that balance between, you know, family health and business.
So I think that is where you're probably a bit of an enigma, in the fact that obviously you were bodybuilding at a high level and obviously in great physical shape, obviously successful. And there's probably, I imagine in your world, that you probably stood out an awful lot because of that.
Oh, I think people thought I was a lunatic, because I'd be going to business meetings with this enormous suit that looked like he'd left the coat hanger in it. And in England, it was a little bit easier because I would just say I'm a rugby player or something sometimes if I didn't want to get into the explanation. But obviously sometimes, particularly when search engines came around, people would Google you prior to a meeting as a way of kind of checking out who you were. And then the first picture that would come up would be you in a kind of small pair of pants on a stage, you know, with tan on. But it was unusual. And also I would go to business events and sometimes I would be dieting. So I'd just say, look, I can't eat, or I brought my food with me. And, you know, a lot of my colleagues would always have a giggle because we'd be in the middle of a conference and they'd hear my Tupperware cracking open because I would be, you know, ready for the next meal. Or I'd be getting up early and going and doing all the training. But I enjoyed having the contrast between the two. And at the time, you know, the competitions were something that really drove me. And I knew I had a short window for that, but I wanted to build a business alongside that and have that so that then when I finished competing, you know, I had something to transition into more. It's
funny you say that, because I remember I left my full-time job 5.5, 6 years ago. And I remember having to take my food out of like conferences, and I'd go and sit in my car and eat, because I don't want to be like sitting just randomly in a glass container and then go back in. And it's funny stories I remember like that, when I used to be like super OCD about everything as well.
Oh yeah. And look, at the time, looking back, it probably wouldn't have mattered if you had to kind of just, you know, think. I took our sales team on for a trip to Monaco, and then I couldn't eat the meal, and then took my Tupperware to the toilet, locked myself in a cubicle and ate the fish and broccoli or whatever I had at the time. I probably, you know, I could have get them to make me just some fish and vegetables and it would have just been okay. But I guess you always think, well, if I miss a slight bit or if I'm slightly over on my food or whatever, it's going to have an impact. So it was just a thing.
Do you think bodybuilding and fitness helped you become successful in business?
I think it definitely did, in that I took the discipline and the structure and the planning out of that. And look, vice versa, that, you know, business helped me with the bodybuilding thing. But you know, kind of understanding a lot of it is just down to putting in the hard work. And also one of the mistakes I made early in bodybuilding is I didn't go and take advice from people who were really experienced and where I wanted to be, because I just figured like I know enough to get by, and I did reasonably well on my own. Whereas then I flipped that into business, which was early on going and getting advice from people who had done great things and been really successful, and learning from all of that. And that was invaluable. If I could go back in time, I would go back to the beginning of my bodybuilding career and go and, you know, have someone who helped me and coached me. But there was a real stigma at the time around coaches. You know, the only people who had coaches were the really top pros who lived in Venice, California, and anyone else, you you just got on with it and figured it out on your own, or you read the books and magazines. Whereas, actually, there's so much that the coaches help people with now, and you see the standard of competitors and also just people in general is significantly improved because they've got someone guiding them and saving them from making all those mistakes that you have to learn the hard way otherwise.
It's funny, I think I was probably the other way around. The first time I ever got in really good shape was when I hired a coach, and I was like, I just did exactly what he told me to do and it worked. And then when I started going to business, I was like, surely I could just apply the same principle, find the person who's done the thing I want, just pay the money, and then collapse the time, get the end result. And that's, for me, life has now become a mission of trying to hunt down the next person who knows the solution to the problem I have. And it makes life a lot easier when you think like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the challenge with business coaching is that the people who are really successful often don't want to do it.
Well, that's the problem I now run into is the people who are the next level above me don't need money, and they don't really need, so like they don't need anything from you. So which is then when it becomes an interesting game how you can get part of their time.
You get access, yeah. And look, there's other things that you have that you can share with people, but it's, if you can do a lot of the legwork, often there's people out there who will help with it. And look, as you may know, I do some mentoring, not as a paid business, just as a, look, this is part of me giving back, because I had the benefit of those people who gave me their time early on. And so it's nice to be able to do the same for people and say, well, look, actually, look, you know, here's some things to think about. Here's some things that you could do. But again, going back to that thing of, well, put together all this information for me, and then putting that together, you actually look at it and say, well, how's my time spent? Where's my revenue coming from? If I'm spending 50% of my time on something that develops 10% of my revenue, perhaps that's not a great way to spend it. But there'll be something else that you're doing that could be really magnified. But it is much harder. And also, I think fitness coaching is pretty accepted, as is personal training. But you don't really see many life coaches or business coaches out there. And some of the business coaches that I know who do business coaching, it's not to be unpleasant, weren't really successful in business in the first place. So it's a more of a difficult field, I think, around that.
So I think a lot of that has a lot of stigma around it. So I also think if I told my parents I'd spent $500,000 in self-education and mentors and all this type of stuff, they'd think I'm insane. But then the outcome on the back end of that has worked pretty well in my favor. Yeah. And I think from the problem is, I think there's a lot of people teaching who haven't actually done the thing themselves. So I never went into like helping people with business kind of intentionally. Our fitness business exploded. We worked with like 17,000 clients, and then I kind of got pulled into this by chance, and then turned out I really enjoyed it, and then kind of made the move stronger that way. Yeah. And I think for me, I just try and look at the framework for anyone who I want help from is like, have they done the thing themselves, and are they kind of still doing it?
Yeah. Yeah, and also you want, in the same way you have competitive coaching, some people who coach competitors had never competed themselves. So ideally you want someone who'd done the competition themselves, but also had a track record of not only getting themselves in good shape, getting other people in good shape. But it's the same thing with business. Have they been able to achieve it in business, but also have they been able to help other people achieve it? Because that's important too. Because some people will have had a particular niche in a certain business, but never been able to then translate that into helping somebody else.
You mentioned niche in business. How important do you think it is people who are successful in business generally try and stay in their lane or their industry? Because sometimes I see people, they say they do well in health and fitness, and then, okay, cool, I want to go build a software business, like completely different.
Yeah. I mean, Warren Buffett says it best, you can invest in things you understand and you know. People are capable of doing multiple things, but some people are better off just doing one thing. And particularly if you find something that's a lucrative niche, if you can just 10x that, then you may be better off doing that than trying to do something that you don't understand and is potentially in a more risk for less reward as well. If you get to a point where there's capacity, I mean, for me, part of the reason for doing something different was just that I wanted a new challenge. So it wasn't that I couldn't have just done more of the same. It was just that I was a bit bored doing that one thing, and having a different way to do it was a new challenge, something interesting, a different type of market. I was marketing to a different age group and a different sector, but I had to learn a lot along the way. But I suppose I felt like I had a good understanding of that as a consumer of that sector, and as someone who'd been in that industry in terms of knowing what machines you would need and what environment was missing as well. But there's certain sectors I would just avoid because I just don't understand it, or I would choose to partner up with somebody where I say, well, look, I'll put in some time and I'll help with the generic strategy and vision of the business, but I don't understand the particular niche that we're in. So the certain business I've invested in where, I have a business partner who has the industry specific knowledge, and if you can partner up with someone like that, great. And that can be another way of dealing with it.
Did UltraFlex start as a passion project just initially?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was supposed to just be the one gym. That was how it was kind of positioned. And look, maybe I was telling myself that a little bit along with my partners in terms of a way to sort of not have any extra pressure. A bit like sometimes when you diet for a show and you don't tell him when you diet and you just do it and see how you kind of turn up. And it was also, at the time I was competing, it was just a base to train, have all the best equipment in there. I think that really helped with the business also, because it didn't come out of, it needs to make X amount of money. It came out of, I want to have the best place that someone could want to train to prepare for competitions or just to get themselves in fantastic shape. And so, we had really expensive kit that just, people hadn't seen before. We had a really, great environment and spent money on the wall graphics and the whole setup to make it a motivational place when you walked in there. And so because it came out of passion, that came across and people really loved it and enjoyed it. And then the business came off the back of that.
And I would say by far UltraFlex is the best gyms I've trained in the UK. I've only been to Rotherham and Derby, but in terms of like variety of equipment, like the Atlanta stuff you have and Prime, so like stuff just kind of pulled in from everywhere. It's and everything is pristine and well kept and not kind of broken. So that's kind of one of my frustrating things. Sometimes you go to gyms and they've got great equipment, but then half of it's broken or the plates are everywhere and it's just a complete mess. Like my OCD hates that.
No, look, well, first of all, thank you for saying that, and I'm glad you think so. And that's the idea is that somebody should be able to go into any one of those gyms and have a great session. They'll all be slightly different, have their own character, but there's a consistent theme of quality. There's going to be great kit in there. There's going to be a good environment, and also, it's not just, you can buy very cheap equipment now that are replicas or other things like that as well. But that we've spent the money getting the quality and the movements that you'd want to train on, I would travel, before we had the gyms and training these gyms in the US or other places and think, oh, if we had a gym like this, and you just realize actually no one's going to do it. So, got together with my partners and put together the gym, and it's been a delight to do that. And also it's really nice to have something that not only is a business, but something that you enjoy being around and being part of. And in some of the business I'm involved in, people buy, but they're not excited about the product, whereas it's great when you, especially with the opening day, when you open a gym and people come in and you can see them training and they're enthusiastic and they're chatting to their friends, have you seen over there, they've got this, they've got that, and they come out and they're buzzing. That's a really nice environment to be around.
When you launched and started the gyms, what was the biggest challenge you had at the beginning, initial phase?
Obviously the equipment takes a long time to come. It's not, they don't keep it all in the warehouse. And I explain this to people when they're talking about setting up a new gym, how long it's going to be. That it takes sometimes between 3 to 9 months for some of this equipment to come. So you've got a lag, where you've got to build the gym and refit it and everything like that as well. And also just when you come to the construction aspect, well, I've done some residential property developments, but there's a whole another level of how can you get the flooring in? The first gym was on the first floor as well, so you literally have to crane the equipment through a barn door sort of window, and then had to manually carry the dumbbells up the stairs. It was really steep stairs, but carrying 100-kilo dumbbells up there, you know about it afterwards as well. So just sort of figuring out all the logistics of doing it and bringing it all together. And then look, each time you do, you learn a little bit more about what machines do people use and not use. What the layout is very important. You can see why supermarkets and businesses like that focus so much on what products go on the end of the aisles, what products are by the checkouts, all that sort of thing. It's the same kind of thing with the gym, which is, how you lay it out affects how people interact in the environment, and what machine, you can put a machine in a different place and it'll suddenly go from being very popular to not really used at all because people just don't see it or they don't kind of come into contact with it. But also trying to make, I've been to some enormous gyms in the US and Canada where the equipment was spaced so far apart, it didn't really have any atmosphere because it was just like a big warehouse full of stuff. If it's too crammed together, you're kind of in someone's space and it's a bit too much. So it's kind of working out the ratios around that. So all these little details that go into making the gym special.
You mentioned you took inspiration from other gyms overseas. Which gyms those specifically?
Oh, it was a mixture. I mean, I'd lived briefly in Los Angeles. So I lived there for 6 months. And so I trained at some of the Gold's gyms and World gyms, all that sort of thing.
What year was that, when they were like in their peak? Probably?
Oh yeah, that was kind of in the late 90s. Okay. So that was an interesting kind of time to be around, and that was the whole thing. And then there's other gyms I trained at, some of the Crunch gyms in Miami. There was a great gym in Norwich where my family were from called Fully Pumped, which was a US style kind of warehouse gym. And then look, there's lots of other great gyms dotted about. It was kind of working out how can you pull the best out of each of those and put them together into something. And we'd always had this polarization, I think, in the UK between commercial gyms, or say commercial, almost like health club kind of gyms, which were either rackets and a bit of a gym on the side, and very expensive, and then budget gyms or backstreet gyms that were had some of the equipment in that you wanted, but were probably a different environment to that the average gym goer would want to go into. So was having something that met in the middle, actually had the quality of a commercial gym, but still had that cool environment that you found in some of the smaller independent gyms or the backstreet gyms as well.
Did you have a lot of people say to you that they thought the market was saturated for gyms like that before you came in? Because I imagine that's a common thought process people have.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I mean, you may well have had it, is in lots of things, there's loads of people who are happy to talk you out of pretty much anything you want 100%. To do. So it's having the courage of convictions. And I guess look, part of the first gym became the pilot, which was, well, I think there is something here and I'm prepared to take the risk and lose the money if there isn't. But I'd always rather have explored an opportunity and found that it wasn't there. But if on balance, I think I'm 80-90% chance of being right, then the ratios are in my favor. And it's explaining also, where we sit in terms of price point. We have more expensive equipment than some of these health clubs that are charging £100 to £300 a month. We have better quality equipment and much more volume of it. But our members can access that for £50-60 a month. We have the kind of equipment that previously you'd have only found in PT only gyms, where you'd have to sign up for a package of $600 a month or whatever. But people can come in and they can have PT in our gym if they want to. But if not, they just want to use this top of line equipment, they can do that. And so it was thinking about what are the points that will differentiate us from the budget gyms, because look, if you want to spend £15 a month, you can get a gym. It's going to be pretty basic, but some people really don't care. And if you want to spend at the top end, there's a thing there, but we know where we are in a mid-market price point. But of course, I'm biased, I would say this, but I think we're incredible value for money, because you could go to a £300 a month gym or some of these crazy £1,000 a month gyms. They still won't have they still won't have spent as much on the equipment as we have, and have handpicked all the quality stuff and picked the individual pieces and so on and so forth.
When it comes to business and say stuff like the gyms, do you have like a decision-making framework you kind of run stuff through when you're making big decisions, or like whether you should do this or whether you shouldn't do this?
I'm a reflector, so I tend to have a kind of initial hypothesis, this is what I think is a thing, and then I'll sit and reflect on it. But also, part of the benefit of being around other people is I'll just float ideas and say, I'm thinking this, and gauge people's reaction, people whose opinion I value, and then that kind of then they just kind of process that and go for it. But also, I'm happy if you do something and it's 80-90% correct, and you just learn as you go and you adapt. Then as we've gone through the evolution of other gyms, each time we kind of know, well, actually this particular piece doesn't get that much use, or when it's laid out like this, it has that impact, and you can refine the model as well.
From your own success across all the businesses you have, how important do you think kind of learning from failures or challenges has been?
Oh, enormous. I mean, you make loads of mistakes, and I think that's part of the preparation for anyone who's setting out on that journey, is to accept the fact that before you go, it's not just going to be, oh, well, I just turned up and everything fell in my lap. And look, if you do, it's great, and some people have been really fortunate in that respect, but you can expect to fail multiple times to get where you want to be. And just look, I say this to my team, I'm okay if we make mistakes, just learn quick, understand what went wrong. Rather than make excuses or trying to bury it, just acknowledge, look, made a mistake. This is what I did. This is what I'm going to do to fix it, and this is how it's not going to happen again. And then you move on and move forwards as well, and not spending too much time beating yourself up about it. And also, the naysayers who are happily living on the sidelines are ready to jump in at any point and say, well, I told you it didn't work, it wouldn't work, and you should just quit and then go back to what you're doing. Actually, no, look, this is just part of the process.
To operate at the level you do, and to have had the success you do, obviously have to have a very high level of stress tolerance. Is that something you've always had, or something you've kind of built up as like a skill, or something you kind of focus on? How do you manage spinning so many plates? Like you mentioned, you're in Dubai for 3 weeks and in the UK for a week, kind of on repeat and moving around all over the place.
Yeah, develops over time, definitely. So I handle stress a lot better than I used to. And in the early days, sometimes it was just plowing through loads of Diet Cokes and just kind of working through the day. I think also you realize that actually getting really stressed about something doesn't help. In fact, it's a hindrance. And trying to operate from a position of calm, because particularly if you're more senior in a business, the people around you are going to pick up whatever energy you're putting out. So if you're stressed, they become stressed. And if you're stressed, they become nervous. And then everything kind of just gets a bit more frantic. Whereas if you're calm and you're like, look, okay, it's not a problem, let's just figure this out, let's just do this. Or you want them to feel like they can come and tell you, look, I made this mistake, or this has happened. Okay, no problem. Like, I'd rather you know that than you bury it, and it comes up in 3 months' time and it's got 10 times worse because it hasn't been dealt with. So, always working from that point of view. And I think you also come to an acceptance of sometimes your expectations are managed in advance, and that sometimes people will just do crap things, people just make mistakes, some people just don't want to work hard. You get to a point of realizing not everyone's going to put in the same kind of level of effort, but working around that. So the resilience around stress comes through with time, and also being more careful in planning in advance. So one of the mistakes I would make is, in the run up to a competition, I would definitely be more tired. And so actually planning less work in that period of time. So then it's easier when you are a bit more grumpy, sleepy, whatever, you can just rest and recover around that. Or if you don't have to make a big decision at that point in time, then just defer it and leave it for a little bit as well. So yeah, it's definitely been learned over a period of time. I'm still learning, of course, as well.
It's interesting because we've had a couple of guys who I mentor, their coaching business is growing, they're making over $200,000 a month. And I was like, I suddenly just thought, I was like, why have these guys done this and then others can't? And the number one character trait they have is emotional stability. Like something really bad happened and then they don't like have an absolute meltdown. They'll think pragmatically, I've got this problem, how do I solve it? And then seek solutions rather than like kind of like hiding under the bed, which I think what some people want to do sometimes.
Yeah.
You touched upon there in terms of you competing for shows and obviously working your job and running with business and stuff. How did you manage that? Was there anything in particular in the process to try and stop you struggling so much in those windows where a lot of people are kind of fatigued?
I had to be really organized. And
did you have a coach?
I did from 2014 onwards. So I worked with John Hodgson, a good friend and IPB Pro, and then Ant Bales latterly as well. And that definitely helped in terms of just having someone where I could just get some guidance around all of that. But with the work aspect, I would have to just be very structured and planned in terms of making sure I have everything organized. I had my training slots. I would structure my diary, which I still carry forward to this day, of this is when I'm going to do the gym, this is when I'm available for meetings and so on and so forth. And obviously I was traveling a lot as well. So just thinking about, when I travel, where am I going to get my food from? Where am I going to be able to train? How am I going to get more transport and all that sort of thing as well. So being really organized with that. But the necessity is the mother of invention in that because I just had to figure it out. And so also sometimes I just had to suck it up. Sometimes it was just setting the alarm clock early in the morning, didn't want to get out of bed, got to get out of bed, going to go do this, because I was determined, I want to go win these shows and I know what it takes to do it as well. And the worst, I think, the worst example I had was I did a show in Holland. I did William Bonnet Classic in that. So I won my class and went into the overall, and I hadn't realized that this was a day and a night show. I thought it was just a day show. So my flight was that same night. So I literally had my suitcase by the side of the stage, finished the awards, got the medal and everything like this as well. Ran off the stage, still covered in tan, put my tracksuit on, went straight to the airport, ran through the airport, got on a plane, and then flew back to the UK, landed, had about 5 hours sleep, and then got up the following morning, went down in the car to Gatwick, flew to Bermuda, and was working out there for a period of time, and still had like the remnants of all this tan on me and everything like that as well. Carried on my diet for another week out there, flew back, worked for a couple of days, flew into Italy and did a show there, won that show, and that was pretty much what finished me off, I think, actually, in terms of competing. I was like, I don't
enough of spinning plates,
enough of doing this, but it was a kind of a point around determination. I wanted to do this, and I wanted to prove it could be done, and I knew actually with the planning and everything like that, I could stick to all the diet, I could stick to all the training. It just made it a bit tougher.
So a lot of people who would be in your position who want to do bodybuilding at a high level will then say that they have to kind of sacrifice their work or their business. What would be your advice to anyone who's maybe younger in that position who wants to go all in a bodybuilding and they kind of forget everything else?
Oh, look, I mean, and that's where I was right at the start. I was, I was fully signed up to become Mr. Olympia and everything like that as well. And obviously it didn't happen, and for good reason. In that, my advice to people would be to build a career or a business alongside bodybuilding. And then if you get to a point where it's clear that you have the talent to take you all the way to the top, then great, focus on that. And there's some people that you and I will know who've been able to turn that into a full-time career. But the probability is maybe it doesn't, or perhaps things change and you don't want to do that. So in which case you've got a great base and a business to do that. And then you can allow the training to just still be your passion, still do the competitions, but just, I knew, although I'd won some shows, I was never going to make a career out of it. And I'm not sure I actually really, in retrospect, would have wanted to. But that was fine because actually I had the two side by side. So I think not putting all your eggs in one basket until it's clear that you have that genetics and you have that capability to go all the way.
I asked that question because I obviously work with a lot of people in the fitness industry, and I see some people who I feel frustrated for them because I know you're kind of going down a dead end alley where like in bodybuilding someone has genetics, right? Not like by the time they're 21 you would kind of know. And I think it's people sometimes need to maybe have an honest conversation with themselves. I think is probably an important thing to do. You are very successful in terms of obviously managing your time, and I presume you have a decent team of people around you. How did you build that team and manage those people?
So started off with just hiring the first person. That can be the most nerve-wracking thing because you think, well, in the early days I was generating some fees that allowed me to kind of cover costs and lifestyle, but then you're going to pay for someone else. So I ended up hiring in a part-time, and then thinking, okay, well actually, as soon as you'd hired someone part-time, you needed them full-time really, because they would just made you so much more productive. You made so much more money. And then what I started doing was just saving up enough. I'd save up 3 months' salary for the next person I wanted to hire. And once I'd saved that up, I'd hire them. And you'd usually find within, particularly if they were good, within 4 weeks, actually, they just made you so much more productive, and you could start to then build a cash pot for the next hire. But that 3 months of being able to fund them if they did nothing for you, just help get you over the hurdle. And also realizing it's a little bit of a hockey stick in that sometimes they come in and they take some of your time and they drain, and that you need to train them. But then, having got through that period, all of a sudden then they make you way more productive. And then it does get a little bit easier because once you've got a base team, they can then help train the new person who comes in and explain to them how you want things doing. But you realize, look, if you want to go, go further in anything, you need a really big support team, and those people can just help you scale in a way that you couldn't do on your own.
Who are the most important people as a support team around you right now?
I've got a team of personal assistants, so they really help a great deal with all just kind of my diary, my day, just organizing stuff, dealing with emails and so on and so forth. How
many do you have?
I have 4. So
okay. So this is interesting. So how do you divide who does what amongst 4 of them?
So they generally have a kind of a task pot collectively, and then I'll allocate that. And also they're working there's one in Hong Kong, one in Dubai, and 2 in the UK. So then they also kind of work based on the timings as well. But they help, just kind of arrange lots of stuff, organize a lot, and take some of the volume out of the work. And then the other team that are valuable, I have an accounts team, so a couple of chartered accountants and a group of accounts team who then monitor the performance of each of the businesses, how they're doing against their plans, the KPIs, and that's really valuable to sort of understand what needs to happen there. And then we also have an ops team, really great team who do all the processing or the management of the business and so on and so forth. So it's hard to pick any of them out because they all have really invaluable roles. But the early stages, it was just working out what's the next thing that what's the next person who could come in and what could they take off you that would then allow you to if they come in and they cost you $2,000-$3,000 a month, but they can allow you to make another $10,000. Those sort of things are no-brainers type of decisions. And then I would look at my diary, and a simple way to do it was to take the diary and color code it. So just a red, amber, green thing, so green being things I should be doing, red things I shouldn't be doing, and then looking at or somebody else could do, and then look at, well, what kind of person could come in and do those types of roles.
Do you see a lot of people still have a resistance to offload some of that stuff?
Yeah, and I was definitely a control freak in terms of not wanting to give that up because you're concerned about, well, how's that going to impact the quality and so on and so forth. And then it's always easier just to do it yourself because it's a discipline to say, well, if I train someone, they might get it wrong a few times. if I train someone, I'm going to have to take time out to train them, and then they're going to have to get up to speed, and then you get into what if they leave and all sorts of other stuff like that as well. But you just realize otherwise you're just going to be working all day, every day.
Have you ever found in your career you've got to the point where your business has obviously done really well, and then you suddenly delegate a load of stuff off, and then suddenly you've got loads of time, and then you're trying to thinking what to do next?
I've definitely seen it where I've had an improvement in my time, and then unfortunately what I've usually done is found something else to do with that. So there's a discipline in terms of actually just not taking on new things. But it's been, where you can create that time, I think it's definitely helpful to plan ahead and think, well, before I just go and fill it with more stuff, or I just run harder again, what should I do with that? So I started a diary system where for the next year I'll have slots booked out for the gym, slots booked out for family time, slots booked out for walking my dog, all these different kind of key bits, and then the gaps in between those can be filled with business stuff. But you make sure you've got a framework that should allow a reasonable proportion of your time. Otherwise, if it's just open for business, then unsurprisingly it just gets filled up with that, and you have nothing else left over. Or you have a really bad training session because you're training late at night or too early in the morning, or you don't see any of your friends or family or other things like that as well.
How do you structure your day now?
So I've actually juggled it around with the times I was here. I like having the mornings free actually as well.
Is that because of the time difference?
Yeah, because this time of the year is 4 hours, the rest of the year is 3. But it just means most of my work is still UK time zoned. So I'll train in the mornings. I'll either do weight sessions or MMA type stuff for jiu-jitsu or boxing, and then if I've got the time, I'll do sauna, ice bath, all that sort of stuff as well, which is good. And then I'll work through. I'll have a gap in the middle of the day where I usually try and have an hour or 2 hours where if I need to have a rest or a sleep, I'll do that, because I just find I get loads more done, and it seems strange to be that busy, but then that hour that I might have a nap for, I can then get loads more work done and make much better decisions. And then flow through, and then I'll always walk my dog around about 8:30 at night, which is kind of the end of my working day. It's a bit of a buffer between the work and the evening as well. And sometimes I'll walk with people, or I'll put my headphones in and listen to a podcast or all that sort of stuff as well.
So you mentioned something that's very interesting, so like sleeping for an hour in the day, and a lot of people probably think that's insane, but I imagine that helps you a lot in terms of clearing your head and just making better decisions.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, think of how you feel first thing in the morning when you've had a good night's sleep. Yeah. If you can get that twice in a day, then it's better. But also I just noticed it was a false economy not to, because my work rate would just slow down significantly in the afternoon, to the point where I don't know if it's 1 unit of work per hour. I was getting half a unit done in an hour, and that would happen for another 4 or 5 hours. So it'd be better to go to have that sleep, and then I was back to doing 1.5 units per hour, and I was getting a lot more done through that period of time. And avoiding, I don't know if you have it sometimes where there's just a particular thing you need to do and it just becomes a blockage, and for whatever reason it's been on your desk for 3 days.
You just
procrastinate, you can't do it, and you find everything else around to do that's not that. Whereas when you've rested, you're like, yeah, just crack that out in 20 minutes and it's just off your desk. But it's not this big kind of, what's it called, pink elephant kind of thing in the corner of the room of, I need to tackle that and I'm just not dealing with it, and I don't know why.
Now, I'm not going to sound like Stephen Bartlett, but I know a lot of people coming onto our podcast and who are not subscribing but still enjoying the content. If I have one small ask from you, it's please hit the subscribe button. It'll help us a lot. It's so funny you say it, 'cause I had that recently with our event we had the weekend. So I had to make a presentation for it, and I probably kicked the can down the road with it for like 2 to 3 weeks, where I just didn't do the thing. It was just sitting in my mind, I need to sit there and just write this thing out. But then it takes me like an hour to sit there and do it, like when I've done it properly. So I think a lot of the time is people we create restrictions in our mind to stop us doing the thing, which is why I often will try and get the hardest thing I need to do, just try and do it first thing in the morning, and then just like have my desk prepared. So like I literally wake up and do it, and then almost not even thinking about that point.
Yeah, no, it really helps. And so having that, you just time block it. So you just say like, I've got 90 minutes, that's when I'm going to do that. But you make sure it's at a time where you're going to be fresh and you can get into it. And once you don't have all those other distractions, you actually find it's quite enjoyable and you get working through it and it's effortless.
Have you found with the change in technology, say in the last 10 years, it's easier to be distracted now than it was previously?
Oh, 100%. I mean, these phones and gadgets are designed to be addictive, aren't they? And I'd argue they're potentially more addictive than some of the chemical substances out there as well. But because also they're more socially acceptable, you'll see people walking around like zombies into the phone, doom scrolling, all this sort of stuff. Look, we've all done it. You sit on the toilet and you realize it's been 45 minutes and your legs are numb. It's dangerous, isn't it? And so it's having those kind of times where you are not consuming those sort of things and being mindful of it, or setting. I did some work with Hubie years ago where we just said, look, just set a time limit on it, so it flashes up and says you've had your half an hour, or you've had your hour on this particular thing, as a bit of a kind of reminder around that, which was helpful for him.
With technology and AI, are you specifically planning to go and develop in certain industries? For example, like AI is not going to replace people needing to lift weights and go to the gym, because you can't yet find a way to do that without that.
It's interesting, isn't it? And you try and think about, it's going to have a massive impact on all industries in different ways, and also probably different timelines as well. There's certain things you can see it impacting, right now, and there's other things that it will come through to. You can see where people would use AI to monitor workouts or something. They'll have some sort of app that will track more things and do more in terms of that sort of thing. I've invested in a couple of AI businesses, and I've also just been looking at how can we use AI as a hybrid. So if you take the wealth management business, rather than AI replacing the advisor, it's more that they're supporting. Where the advisor is having a conversation, actually it's providing enhancement, or it's logging some of that and providing good meeting notes and actions and other things that come out of that. So you can just make the person more efficient and make the team more efficient as well. AI is not perfect yet, but it'll get there really, really quick. But there's you still have to check the output to make sure there's no mistakes and other things in it as well. But it's going to move at such a pace. It's anytime you think you're anywhere close to understanding it, it's just moved on a level.
Do you think AI will eventually end up replacing coaching and consulting?
It's in some parts yes, and some parts no. So look, where you've got very low ticket stuff potentially, because actually whereas where you've got more complex things, and also part of the aspect is the emotional support and the accountability. So I'd probably feel more inclined to blow off the AI in terms of not do what it says, because I don't feel the accountability. Whereas if I'm paying a person and they're saying to me, how have you done this? I'd feel worse about that, because also I don't want to waste the time, I don't want to waste the money, and so on and so forth as well. But a lot of these things tend to affect the low ticket stuff. In the wealth sector, we see it where people are investing relatively small amounts. Actually, that probably works really well for them, and that market isn't really suitable for face-to-face advice. So it may well be the same with coaching, where it has an impact on that kind of lower end. But also, using AI and automations, I'm sure can help you and your coaches become more efficient. And so actually you can deal with more volume, and it's more the AI does some of it, some of the follow-ups or some of the nudging, and then the coach does some of the parts, and it's the two working in tandem.
That's my opinion 100%, because I think the biggest thing, most people know what they need to do, they just don't do it. So they need accountability from someone they respect. And a lot of the time it's almost just reassurance. So I think that's what AI won't be able to replace, but what it is going to completely eradicate, and I've already seen it, is the low ticket app stuff that's like $10 a month, because by default, the person who's going to want the $10 a month thing will just go on ChatGPT.
Yeah. Yeah. And they can get the information for free, or, so that's the thing. And, so I suppose it's, how can you, for different people, how can they build AI into those businesses and use it just to make them more efficient, allow them to deal with volume without the kind of administrative headache, and do some of the heavy lifting without trying to do all of it.
Your background's obviously predominantly from the wealth management side. For people who are listening to this who want to achieve financial freedom, what would be the best kind of financial advice you'd give to that audience? Predominantly our audience is 90% probably male who are listening to this, who are like 25 to 35. So
I think avoiding the get rich quick stuff is important. There's a lot of it out there.
Crypto meme coins.
Yeah, that sort of thing. It's tempting, isn't it? Because look, who doesn't want to, get I remember being 25 and you want to get there in a hurry. So, so avoiding some of that, I think accepting the fact that it's going to, in most likelihood, it's going to take a lot of hard work. So, putting in the hours, and it's not going to suddenly change overnight as well. So, but actually part of the fun is the increments along the journey of getting a slightly nicer car, or being able to go on holiday, or doing other kind of fun stuff as well. And putting that time in, finding an industry that's, has the revenue capability to do it. So, if you look at what you guys do, even they're not going to jump in and suddenly be a 200K a month coach, but it's nice to know you can get there. There's certain industries where, it's going to take a long, long time for them to get there. And if you look at some of the traditional professions, actually, by the time you're making that kind of money, well, some of them never make that kind of money, as you probably well know. But by the time they're making bigger money, they're going to be in the 50s because, they've had to wait to their partner in a law firm or something like this as well. So finding those types of industries is really important. And then I think, it's not a big thing. We work with a lot of pro athletes, footballers, cricket players, rugby players, all that sort of thing, is not getting into the spending thing in an early days. So the temptation is, make a little bit of money, spend it all, and then figure out how to make some more. And in some cases, I've seen people who they spend it before it even came in, and so on, is avoiding that trap of trying to keep up with the Joneses. It's just being cool of like, I know what journey I'm on, as well as making some money. I'm saving some, I'm putting some away for the future. I'm reinvesting in myself. And you mentioned like investing in coaching courses, training courses. When I was working, my first job was working at a call center after university, and I was making $9,500 a year full time. So it's pretty poor wages, isn't it? So I knew I didn't want to do that for forever. I was working for a bank, and they were great in terms of the training, but there wasn't the progression there. But I took what little spare money I had to pay for online courses that I could learn things, and I did qualifications in the financial services industry that then allowed me to get the next job that took me from 10 to 20K. And then you kind of progress on from there. So it's thinking about what qualifications or skills can you learn that's going to make you more valuable, either to an employer or to working in a business as well.
Do you still get people to coach, consult you now that you're trying to learn from?
I do, albeit it's been harder. Sadly, the chap I mentioned before passed away a few years ago. So, I've had a few people whose advice I really respect, who I'll talk to. But that's a criticism myself. I should have someone who I have that in more formally arranged with. Look, perhaps that's one of the very few downsides of Dubai, is that some of those people who are further on, it's a young people's place, isn't it? There's lots of people here who are kind of 20 to 40. Some of those people may still be living in London or other places, but there's no excuse. It still can be accessed as well.
You mentioned there about people not spending all the money and being retarded financially. So I get this huge frustration when the people I know, and I know roughly how much money they make, and I see them buying business class, first class flights. I'm literally like, this is the most stupid thing I've seen. What percentage of people's income do you think they should look to live off? Do you have kind of like ratios, what you'd recommend to people in terms of saving and spending? Yeah,
I mean, in the early days, I remember pretty much everything I had was going to just paying living costs, and I had a very little left over, which would just go on the occasional bit of food or gym memberships or stuff. A general rule of thumb for people when they start making better money was a third. So in the UK was to save a third for tax, to have a third for living costs, and to save a third. But it's really just getting to the point of when you work out your disposable income, some of those sort of things. Actually, look, if you could take that same money and invest that in a course that would then help you be way better at your job, that would make you an extra £5,000 a month. So you've taken what would have been a 3K business flight, and now you make an extra 60K a year. That's a huge compounding effect on your financial position, it just has such a detrimental impact with people where they don't leave themselves with any disposable income, and also then they have to make much more short-term decisions. And we see it with some of the sports clients, where also there's certain careers that have a very short window. The money that they're making, that 5 to 15 years, has to last them the rest of their lives. So if they don't save in that case, those sort of people, we're recommending they save 60-70% of their income, because that lump sum then has to carry them through for a huge amount of time. And sadly, you see sports people, musicians, other things, who come out of that with less than nothing because they've spent it all, and they've got a lot of parasites around them who drain them of it all as well. So it's having that discipline as you go along, which is, spend a bit because you should incrementally increase your lifestyle, save a bit, invest that either in yourself or in other things that are going to produce a future income, and keep that balance as you go along.
This is also where I find business or fitness are the same thing, because it's delayed gratification. It's like you don't eat the cheesecake today, so then you look good tomorrow. It's like you don't spend the money today, so then you can have financial freedom further down the road. I think a lot of people are robbing their future by trying to live above and beyond now.
Yeah. And also, look, in that stage where you're not spending the money, if you feel that you need the car or the holiday or whatever to be with the right people, in inverted commas, then you're not with the right people in the first place, because if they're really genuine people, they won't care whether you're doing that or not. So it's getting comfortable in your own skin to be like, look, I'm in my lane doing my own thing, and I might not have the expensive thing now, but just watch where I end up in the next 5 or 10 years. I'm going to kind of blast past you.
It's one of those things that there's a couple of things where this has happened to me over the last few years. People ahead of you don't care what you have, they care what you do. And I did a podcast with a guy called Spencer Lodge, I don't know if you know him. And I have this Rolex that's covered in diamonds, it's way over the top. And he's like, what the fuck is that? And I was like, I get your point. So like small things to me like that are people who are successful don't care about shiny watches, cars, and other stuff. Not saying that someone shouldn't do that, because I've done that, but you also realize once you have those things, they don't really mean anything. It's the process of being able to get them that's cool. Yeah,
and also, look, if someone can do that out of a small amount of their disposable income, then great. If that's what they're going to enjoy, then so be it. But get to that stage first, and also it's much more comfortable doing those things out of income rather than out of capital. And particularly then when you there's a life thing. I have some clients who they need to spend more because they've saved and saved and saved, and they literally don't spend enough. But that's
and they're afraid to spend.
Yeah, and because they've got in the habit of saving their whole lifetime. And my point to them is, well, look, if you don't spend it, your kids are gonna, and that's fine. But they should do more with it. But that's a different generation. They particularly that kind of post-war generation were much more frugal. We've probably got a generation now who have never really seen kind of actually what's the impact of, because every time there's been a financial crisis, the solution by governments is generally to print money, just print trillions of things. And then we have the silent tax, which is inflation, but no one's really felt that actually gone through a really painful period where that there is no jobs around or there is no money around, and the impact of that. And it's those periods that kind of taught those people to look, it's good to have some money stuck away for a rainy day.
When you first started getting some financial success, what was the best thing you did with your money that you personally enjoyed?
In terms of a fun thing?
Yeah, fun things. Yeah. Not investing. I want this thing. I want this holiday, or I did whatever.
Yeah, a car. I mean, a car was probably the thing. I was really into a car guy, so I had an old M3 convertible.
The E46 one.
Yeah. Which looking back was totally inappropriate for what I was doing as a career, because it had chrome wheels. It looked like a drug dealer's car. It's black outside, red inside, all that
and
sort of
probably
stuff.
Like £300 at the time. So.
Yeah, so just walking around. So you can imagine when you pull up in someone's neighborhood in that enormous with a big briefcase, people think you're coming to collect debts from the neighbors or something like this as well. But I really enjoyed that, and that was I'd set myself a specific goal, which was, okay, when I can get income to this level and this to this, then I know actually I can comfortably afford the car, and it gave me something to work towards. But I made myself a deal, which was also, I shouldn't just get there and then think, oh no, I still shouldn't do it. I should do it because it's part of that incremental improvement. So yeah, I've got some fond memories of driving around with friends in that car. Also, I suppose that was the first time. Previous to that, I'd had a Citroen Saxo VTR, VTS, the old hot hatches. Yeah. So I'd never really had a kind of a nicer car. So that was the first time I really had something special like that. And it was actually a friend of mine who'd had a different model. He had the hardtop, and I'd always thought, oh, look, one day I'd love to do that. So he really motivated me to go do it.
That was back then. With now, how do you manage your habits and what you have to do every day? Do you have a certain process? People are obsessed with morning routines. How do you decide what you're doing today? What are the key top 3 things you need to do each day?
I mean, I'm a big creature of habit, so I like my routine. So I'll always tend to get up at pretty much the same time every day, 6:30, 6:45, depending. But
what time do you go to bed?
Usually about 10. Okay. So try and get the 8 hours. But I'll get up. I'll either, if I, I'll go out on the balcony, I'll go down to the beach and I'll do the sunlight, take my kind of t-shirt off, do breath work, and just do that for 10, 15 minutes. I'll have a liter of water with salts in as part of that. I find that as a first thing, that's the thing that kind of wakes me up, because I can be groggy in the mornings otherwise. Then I have my breakfast, and then on training days I have caffeine. Non-training days I don't have it, because I have to limit that. Otherwise, I could have caffeine all day, every day. And then I'll go do my training, whether that's the weights or the MMA type stuff. And then on the MMA days, I'll have the sauna ice bath. On the weights days, I'll just I'll have recovery, I'll have some physio. And so that becomes my kind of morning structure. And then I feel like my body likes the routine, in that when it knows what's coming, I have the same food, I do this kind of the exercise, I feel great, and then that sets me up for a really productive day after that.
You have a family and a father. How did that change managing the business and everything else? Like, I recently had a 4-week-old baby, as you know.
Yeah.
What would be your advice to me in that situation?
Well, look, first of all, congratulations, because that's the first bit I would say, when they're tiny, is there's not really much you can do, and you feel a bit of a spare part, because you're like, I'm kind of here, and you can have a cuddle with them, but it's not as much. When they get to 3, 4 onwards, then that's when you kind of gets really fun, and you can do more and more with them. But look, I think for me, it definitely motivated me to think about what I can do and what I can achieve. And in a nice way, having the pressure of also, look, there's someone else to support who relies on me and needs me to provide for them as well. And also made me think about how I am and what I do in terms of being, I'd like to be a role model for him, or for someone to be, something for him to look up to. So he had a little book, and it's like, when I grow up, I want to be, and he just put like daddy, and that was the best thing for me, because that's what, I'd want him to be like that. So I think it's very easy for people, and I don't like it when I hear people say, oh, I could do this, but I've got kids. I could do this, but I've got kids. It's like, well, actually, no, I could do this, I will do this because I've got kids, and I want them to see that, this is all possible. And rather than using the kind of kids as an excuse for everything that they don't do, it's like, well, if your kids are in bed, you can get up and train. You can buy some exercise equipment for your home, all that sort of stuff. It'll be harder, in that way, but it can still be there. But also, you want to be the person for them, and also you want to be fit and healthy, so that you're around to help guide and shape them through their lives as well. In terms of being a dad, it is difficult. You need to kind of be disciplinarian, but also you want to be the fun one who's doing all that sort of stuff as well. So it's a balance between the two. But you've got a lot to look forward to in that respect. It's a huge amount of fun, and it's a real blessing.
It's something I'm excited for. I think what's been interesting as well is, like, people can find a reason why you can't do something, but they find it harder to find a reason why you can do something. Mm. So, like, when a load of people said to me, like, oh, your business is really going to struggle, you won't be able to work out, you won't do blah, 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 blah. Like, the list kind of keeps going on and on and on. But, like, I've been very fortunate. We had our best month of the year last month when my daughter was born. So, like, nothing has changed. Like, is it kind of anarchy and a bit all over the place a little bit? Yeah, but you just figure it out. And I think that's why a lot of people just look for an excuse why they can't do something rather than why they can.
Yeah. No, 100%. And look, one of the things poor performers are exceptional at is making excuses. You'll find they have an amazing excuse for everything, and sadly, that's the only talent that it develops. Whereas actually, one of my kind of mantras was always no excuses, which was, well, actually, if you want it, you can find a way and you can do it. And also, I go train with him now as well. So we get up and we'll go do some boxing, we'll go do some exercise, something like that as well. And it's good to get them into to kind of healthy lifestyle, because I think that'll be one of the big challenges. And you mentioned technology. One of the things for you as a dad is balancing. I'm not saying don't let them ever use it, but you see some of these kids that are already zombies to iPads and phones, and that. How that's going to impact on the kind of the mental and physical health over the years, I don't think it's going to be a positive thing. So it's keeping them where they can have a bit of TV time, but then actually live in the real world and do real things.
You mentioned something interesting, that the no excuses mentality. Where does that come from?
Oh, I mean, I think earlier on in my life, I definitely did make excuses, and you kind of almost have this internal dialogue, don't you? Which is I can hear myself making an excuse, and I just think, oh God, what a load of rubbish. You kind of talking through with yourself. And also, one of the things that happened to me early in my life, I lost my dad at a young age. And he'd battled through a very severe primary pulmonary hypertension. He'd had a heart and lung transplant in the early 90s, when it was very rare. And then he went back to flying military jets. After that, he was the first pilot in history to get cleared to fly military jets after having had such a serious operation. So when you see him with a scar from here down to his stomach, where they literally pulled his chest open, swapped his heart and lungs out with somebody else. They took his heart out and gave it to the taxi driver who was in the bed next to him as well. And, he wake up from that operation and he was full of energy. He was excited about, kind of new lease of life and everything like that. And you think, and he had obviously challenges with that due to the medication he had to take for anti-rejection because it's not your actual heart and lungs. And then you think, oh, I'm whining that I have to get up and do 30 minutes of cardio. Well, you just so it puts these things in context. Another big one for me was to train in a gym when I was dieting. Sometimes you just feel a bit fed up and a bit frustrated. And there was a chap in there who'd lost his arm, and he had a prosthetic, one for pushing movements, one for pulling movements. And you could see it was really uncomfortable for him to wear, and obviously had an impact and affected his life and his training. But every time I see him, I think, what am I getting? Feeling hard done to by here, and so. That really changed a lot for me during the dieting phases, where I suddenly realized, look, this is not a burden. This is a blessing. I get to pursue my dreams. I get to hopefully fulfill my potential. And I should just be delighted that I get to go do this, because some people are, just thinking about how they just get through today. So rather than seeing it as some sort of problem or some sort of thing that is a challenge, actually see it as a real opportunity. And then once you change your mindset on that, you just feel suddenly everything feels much more effortless and easy and all that sort of thing. And you remember, oh no, I'm lucky to get to do this.
I had a very similar experience. I can remember it graphically. I was in Pure Gym in Epsom, and I was doing cardio at like 6 a.m. for a bodybuilding show I was getting ready for. And there was a woman who I was like feeling very sorry for myself. I looked over and there was a woman next to me who was on the same piece of equipment, and she was clearly going through like chemotherapy and had cancer. And I was like maybe like 27, 28. Yeah. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like you're just creating reasons to feel sorry for yourself with a pity party. And I think that's where people need to choose their mood and always see the positive of something rather than negative.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, look, those moments are sobering, aren't you? And you suddenly, you look at that and you realize how blessed you are and how fortunate you are to do that. But then it goes back to the excuses, which is, well, instead of making an excuse that I can't do this or it's hard or whatever, it's just get on with it as well. And I think it can sound a bit cheesy, but once you change that how you feel and that approach, then that just makes everything feel more effortless. And every now and again, you still feel tired, you still feel fed up or sore or whatever as well. But your general starting point is, look, I'm fortunate to be able to do what I do.
What do you do now to learn?
I like to read. I like to listen to. I mean, look, the great thing is there's loads of podcasts, and I hope this could give some useful context for people. There's loads of really good podcasts. So when I'm walking the dog, I'll stick the headphones in and listen to that as well. But also just talking to people. I mean, this is one of the benefits of being here is I'll meet up with, we've got a mutual friend, obviously, Dan. I'll meet up with one of the kind of people, and we'll chat about different things that we're doing. And then, he'll tell me he was telling me the other day about something called Notion, and I'll tell him about something that I was doing. And you just pick up things from different people because they're all doing similar things, but in different ways. And actually there's loads you can pick up from having those conversations.
Do you think it's easier to be successful in Dubai than it is in the UK?
I think you can do it in both, but I would say there's a lot of people here with that success mindset, and there's almost a process of natural selection, which is if you weren't positive and driven, you'd have never got on the plane in the first place. And if you did, you might have gone back because you just didn't apply yourself while you're here, or you got caught up in the brunches or the beach clubs or whatever. So by that process of people who've chosen to be here is because they want to come out and make something of themselves and work hard. There is a disproportionate amount of people here who are of that mindset that you can benefit from. And also it's aspirational place in that you look around at some of the success, and there's lovely houses and nice cars and people doing really well. And if you can be motivated and gain enthusiasm from being around that, then it's a very very good place to be.
I find it can push people one way or the other. Either they get maybe resentful to some of it, and then other people get super excited because it shows like what's possible. For me, it's a what's possible scenario, because like there's kind of no limit. Whereas I think in the UK, it's depending, like I think also no matter where you're from, like there's kind of like a glass ceiling what people's expectations are. Like I remember when I was 21, my life goal was to make £100,000 a year. I was like, if I do that, I've like made it, because that was my kind of expectation of what good was. But then that changes depending on the environment you're in.
Oh, definitely. I know part of the reason it's become more challenging in the UK is because there is this anti-aspiration, particularly with the current government, there's an anti-aspirational mentality, which is at the moment one of the big opportunities for the UK is to make the UK an AI hub for Europe. But at the same time, they're talking about bringing in wealth taxes, capital gains tax, exit taxes, and all this sort of thing. So that disincentivizes those companies and those people who would move to the UK and do that. So that's part of the challenge. And you know, if you have an exit tax, for example, for people leaving the UK, well, what does that say to young people? You know, do you want to build up a really big business, and then if you want to move abroad, you're going to have to pay an inordinate amount of tax, or does it say to people, well, actually leave now and build something somewhere else? And that's part of, I think, the challenge we have. And look, I love the UK, but it's more, I feel sad to see that we've ended up in this kind of anti-aspirational position for, you know, with the current government that we have, where it's, well, how can we squeeze more tax out of those people, rather than how can we encourage entrepreneurs to set up businesses, create jobs, and build tax revenue through that, rather than how can we just squeeze people harder and harder. You're
a very smart guy. What would you, if you were in charge of the UK, what would you do to fix that?
Oh, it's a scary thought, huh? I mean, this part of the problem is,
not that you probably want to be in charge of the
UK. Don't tempt me, because I'll get some free time. The part of the problem we have at the moment is that actually the caliber of our politicians is pretty poor. So these are the people who are making some of the biggest decisions about the country, who are, in some cases, have never had a job. You know, they're career politicians, and all of a sudden, you know, you and I get the job there, and you're in charge of health and I'm in charge of defense, and we have no background or experience or so on and so forth in there. And so, you know, one of the things that we need is to be able to make more long-term decisions. If you think of how well the UAE is done, it's because they have a long-term plan. They have consistent government. They don't have a chop and change every 3 years. And we you know, we look at HS2. You know, we built this. I know we've cancelled it. We've wasted X number of billion on all this sort of thing. You know, these countries are able to have a consistent vision, have a stable environment, and also give people, the businesses, a confidence. So if you look at a business who might look to relocate to the UK, well, they don't know what government's going to be in place in 4 years' time, and whether they're going to be the policies that they're going to have are going to be better or worse for them. So it creates that instability and that uncertainty, which is terrible in business, because you need to have a plan. Whereas, well, you know, with countries like the UAE, they have a long-term plan. They have a 2030, a 2040 vision, and you know this is going to be the same or similar to what it is now. So that gives people the confidence of knowing, okay, well, actually, I can plan accordingly for that and decide whether that is or doesn't work. So to answer your question, I think one of the things that UK needs to do is maybe look at, do we have a different system where we have a longer term government in place that comes in for 10-year period, or do we change to a system that allows you know, some more of an autocratic method, where you have somebody who takes control of the decision making of the country and actually allows some of these projects to be properly done and planned out, and so on and so forth, because we really need it. You know, you have a decaying infrastructure, you know, aging population, rising tax. There's lots of challenges. You need somebody really good to deal with that, not someone who's just thinking about being in, you know, how do they get elected again, which is a major problem.
Do you think the UK would benefit from a leader like Donald Trump? Because obviously his background isn't a career politician, he was business.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can see the appeal of Donald Trump, and he was kind of the anti-politician in terms of saying, actually, look, you know, we need to change some things, and you could see that situation was just getting worse and worse. You know, obviously you need to, having that business acumen, you know, would definitely help with those sort of decisions. But also moving away from some of we have a kind of a permanent government almost in the civil service who kind of run and steer things, is moving towards something that works out, well, how do we generate growth in the economy, because that will then create jobs, that will then generate revenue, and then you have a lot it's a lot easier to make decisions where you have surplus funds that you can allocate to certain things, and how do we strip away some of the waste that's in there. So there's you can see there's a building appetite towards something like that. The question is, there's some really capable people in the UK or who could help run it. It's just, would they want that job? Probably because not. No, and it's all the public scrutiny and the pressure and and all that sort of thing, and it's a thankless task also, because I feel you have some sympathy for them, because you make one decision and 60% of the people hate you, and you make the other decision, 40% of the people hate you. And these are not always good options as well. And as a country, we probably need to feel some pain for a period of time, which is, it's a bit like a person who's overspent on their credit card. As at some point they've got to batten down the hatches and strip things back for a little while, and then work out a plan to build and recover. The UK has so much potential. It's just that it's not being fulfilled with where we are at the moment.
What I think is very interesting is, obviously there was a big thing about the national identity cards that they had the idea for, and obviously there's massive uproar against that. But then in the UAE, everyone has an ID card, but which no one has any issue with, because everyone trusts the government here and doesn't have an issue, which I just thought was an interesting correlation in terms of how different the relationship is with authority here versus the UK, because people don't have a distrust of the government here.
You can understand why they have a distrust, because if you say the wrong thing on Facebook or Twitter, whatever, you're in prison. Yeah. But if sometimes there's fairly serious criminal acts that go relatively unpunished, if the solution is to try and quell dissent by censorship or by imprisonment, that's when the country's got to a pretty bad place.
From my experience of moving here in the last 3-4 years, I also think that the country in Dubai has become rapidly improved more, even for Westerners. So for me, this just feels like Europe.
Yeah. So
obviously we're in an Arab country and it's an amazing place and culture's brilliant, but everyone, like all my friends now basically moved here. Yeah. Everyone here is most of them are British or kind of expats. So I think it's almost like the new land of opportunity for those from Europe.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it when you look around. And just to be clear from my previous comments, we're adding the UK, not the UAE. Just to make sure. But you can see it when you go around. There's growth. There's cranes. There's people. People moving here. It's exciting. It feels like a real boom period for the country. And I'm sure at different points in time, the world economy and the local economy will have ups and downs. But the trend is really, really positive. They've done a great job of making it an attractive place for people to live and work and do business as well. So, you've got that future plan of there seems to be no sign of that changing, and it's very smart, isn't it? You encourage people to come here on a regime where you have much more generous tax positions for people, and have all the quality of infrastructure that you pay for from your funds as well.
Your huge passion, obviously, some of your businesses is health and fitness. What's your opinion of the health and fitness scene in Dubai?
Look, it's great. There's the weather is conducive to health and fitness. It's more likely for people to be outdoors. Seems to be a lot of good people in good shape as well. And there's loads of, whatever your particular type of fitness that you're into, there's loads of gyms and different types of clubs and so on as well. Obviously paddle's big here as well. You've got lots of different stuff going on with run clubs and high rocks and other stuff like that as well. I read an article actually in the press today. It was talking about how Dubai's moved a little bit from boozy brunches to wellness, and you can see that in terms of particularly now with the younger generation, but just more broadly, people are looking for those types of things to spend their spare time on rather than bottomless brunch. And look, there's loads of those brunches if you want to do that. So, but there's both sides of it now, which is interesting. And then look, there's obviously the gym market here. I mean, that's something I've been looking at really, really closely in terms of opportunities here for UltraFlex, and to be part of that market, because there's all sorts of different things. Whatever style of gym you're into, there's something that fits that mold really. But I think there's also a big opportunity for UltraFlex to have a stake in the ground here as well.
I agree. I think the only thing I miss from the UK from a fitness perspective is the atmosphere of gyms, if that kind of makes sense, because some of them here are very big and very soulless, or almost too corporate-y, commercially, whereas the atmosphere of the UK gyms and even the US gyms as well, I would say, it's something that's maybe lacking here a little bit.
Yeah, and therein lies the opportunity, because if you can bring that atmosphere along with a top level of equipment and a really high end fit out, then that's a big part of why people go to the gym. And one of the things we work really hard on is that when you walk into one of those UltraFlex gyms in the UK or in Athens, is that you pick up that energy and that environment, and then even if you're not feeling like you're really super motivated, then you just go in there, you start to get that buzz and I want to go do this, and you look around and you see people having a great session and there's that environment, and it pushes you to do a little bit more.
Would you ever try and push the UltraFlex gyms to North America?
Potentially, the American market is enormous, and obviously it has a tradition of gyms. Obviously, had the big franchise in the past, like Gold and so on. So there's a big market there, and I think the short term opportunity is Europe and the Middle East, but certainly that would be interesting.
For our audience listening, if you're a guy who's 25 to 35, you want to be really successful in the next 5 years, what would be the best piece of advice you give them to finish off?
Oh, that's a big one. I think put a plan in place. So if you were going to take on a new client for coaching, you start with a plan where this is what you need to do, diet and training and so on and so forth. If for that person to go and then be really successful in the next 5 years is, okay, well, what am I going to do? But actually to sit down and write a business plan or a life plan, which is, okay, this is what I'm going to do with my work. This is what I'm going to do with my training. This is I'm going to kind of do my personal life, and also get some, alongside that, get someone whose opinion you respect to help you with that. To put that plan, to challenge you on certain points, to flesh out certain details that are needed in that, because it's a strange thing. You wouldn't get in the car without putting in your sat nav where you're going. You just drive around and kind of figure out where you end up. But people do that with their life, which is they have no plan and they just kind of, I'll just see where the wind takes me. So, if you have that plan, actually, it makes it a lot easier to get there. It's not to say you can't evolve or adapt the plan. It's always useful to be pragmatic as you go along. But having that initial plan, which is, okay, well, what do I want? And part of that is not just what do I think I want or what do other people seem to want. What do I want? What would success look like in that 5 years' time? So you mentioned before, well, actually, X level of income, I'm living in this place, I'm driving this car, I have this much time with my friends and family, I get time to do my hobbies, activities and interests, all those sort of things, and having a plan around that is really key.
It's interesting because that's one of the things that shocks a lot of people when they first work with us. Is the first question we ask is like, how much money do you want to make, and like specifically why? But most people have no clue and they're just doing it for the kind of sake of it.
Or they just say to you, I guess they'd probably say just as much as possible. Yeah. But it's like, but what would it mean to you is really a key question, isn't it? Because that then becomes more motivation when you think, well, that would allow me to do this or allow me to help my family out or other things as well.
Because it's the emotion that will then drive you to actually do the thing. And the number one reason people aren't successful is because they don't actually execute on the information they have.
Yeah. I mean, one of the extensions of that is when they say, well, do this, and say, well, how important is that to you on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most important? Because we do that sometimes with a kind of financial aspect, where they say, well, it's a 10 out of 10 importance, and then 2 weeks later they're slacking and like, well, you told me this was 10 out of 10 importance to get to X amount per month, and that would allow you to help your mum retire or whatever it was. I thought you said it was a 10, but if it was 10 out of 10, why would you not be putting in a shift and doing everything you could do towards it?
In my opinion, that's just because people aren't being honest with themselves.
Yeah. Which is a major challenge, isn't it? But also once you get to a point, I mean, you can have fun at laughing at yourself, which is to the point of realize actually, no, that's just an excuse, or no, I'm just not being honest or whatever. Then it's much easier to have a proper dialogue about it.
100%. Big thank you for your time today, Charles. Well, make sure you check out Charles' Instagram. I'll put all the information below, and also UltraFlex Gyms. If you enjoyed the podcast, make sure you check out the next episodes on screen now and subscribe, and we'll see you next one coming up.